This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
This is the Hindsight 20 podcast. I'm your host, Jerry Mallory. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. As always, proud member of the Detroit Sports Podcasting Network. Not just me, but the whole crew. So if you got iTunes, that must mean you have an iPhone, perhaps an iPad, a Mac. All those things are great for subscribing to the Detroit Sports Podcast. And you won't just hear myself. You hear Doc and Jock. Tigers talk. Hey, man, listen up. Tigers are just around the corner. The season is nigh, as they say. It's right around. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. But I think that means near. You get what I'm saying. Tigers talk. Fantasy Geeks, you name it, it's all here, as well as myself. If you don't have an iPhone or you're not part of the Apple community, that's fine. You can go to Podbay. I like to use them, and you can subscribe that way as well. So we got a lot to talk about on today's show. There have been a few signings, a few swings and misses, so we'll get into all of those things. As you see, we're just a little bit later, a few hours later than normal. Had some family things to tend to. As you know, that's the exception, not the rule. We love to bring you your podcast, your shows in a timely fashion. So I do apologize for being a few hours late. And hey, I'll promise to my very best ability that it won't happen again. So like I said, today's show will be talking about a couple of the under the radar signings, a couple of swings and misses. Who's left in terms of free agency? You know, you look at our team, we certainly could use a defensive end. We could certainly use an offensive tackle. We're looking at offensive tackles. So who's left? I'm going to tell you right now, the list is not pretty. So if you think I'm going to throw out some names that's like, oh, we can still sign him. Not a lot of those, but we'll talk about that nonetheless. Darius Slay, Ziggy Ansah, those guys are about to get paid. We've talked about this before. Let's throw some numbers around, especially with Darius Slay. He just met recently. Well, not him, but his agent, Drew Big Money Rosenhaus, just met with the Lions brass. And so we'll have to talk about that. And at the end, we have a draft mixer, if you will. I'm pretty confident that we're going to draft certain players in certain positions. Not so confident to nail it down to one, but what I've done in each round, round 1, round 2, round 3, and then there's a little surprise in there. We all love to talk about trades. They aren't that likely, but we'll throw one out there. I'll give you an option. Each round, 2 names, high possibility. At this point, the Lions are looking at these guys. They target them. They would fit a need, and they could be drafted by your squad. So let's talk about some of the under-the-radar signings. As you know, we swung, but we did not connect with Russell Okung, but we did make a minor signing, if you will, bringing in Jeremy Curley, wide receiver formerly of the Jets. Now, he took a back seat last year. You had Fitzpatrick, Brandon Marshall, and Decker just having some good chemistry, and so he didn't do a ton. But this signing, I think, gives him, an opportunity to have an increased role, which he's looking for. He's probably the third best receiver on this team now. You have to cement him there at that point. You know, there could still be trades, free agency, and the draft. But at this point, I'm putting him above T.J. Jones. I'm putting him above Corey Fuller if he even returns. And so a guy that has made some spectacular catches. His usage rate dropped last year, but he has great hands. And what's encouraging about that is you look at your receiving core. Now, Ebron is going to be a big fixture in that. He doesn't have good hands. But your top 3 receivers at this point, you've got Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, and you've got Curley. All of these guys, very, very good hands. You know, the Lions have been plagued with drops for I don't know how many years, since I can remember watching the team. You know, even the days with Herman Moore and those guys, it seemed like, you know, Herman was sure-handed, but Johnny Morton was good, but he would drop occasionally. You know, it just always seemed to affect our team more often than not. And so I like what we're attacking now. Sure-handed guys. Stafford gets the ball in their area. They come down with it. The other aspect, though, with Curley is his special teams. You know, we looked at Norwood from Denver. You're hoping that we'd bring in someone that can fill in that void. I don't want Amir Abdullah nor Golden Tate returning punts anymore. T.J. Jones looked good at one point, especially I think it was in the preseason he ran one back for a touchdown, but not a lot of experience in the regular season. You know, Curley comes in, not only is he your third receiver, but he's also someone that will probably be penciled in as your punt returner at the very least. So you like these under-the-radar signings. You know, he signed for 1 year, $1 million. You can't get all the big names. Sometimes these big names don't quite pan out. we might be looking at Russell Okung and saying, I'm glad we didn't sign him. Although Denver, very creative in that contract. I mean, they can get out at any moment. This year, it isn't a huge amount. And the following years, if they keep him, they're all team options. It's like, well, if we're paying you $12 million, that means you must be playing pretty good. So it's win-win for them. But again, sometimes you look at names and they go by, your Malik Jacksons, your Eric Weddles. I'm not saying these guys are going to be bad. I'm not, subjecting them to doom and gloom. I'm just saying those signings don't always pan out. And so, sometimes the under-the-radar guys bring a lot to the table. Stephon Charles is another guy. The defensive tackle situation, it was dicey, once the season ended because we had really no one. We had Karan Reed, Gabe Wright. You bring back Teron Walker. You bring back Haloti Ngata. You bring in Stephon Charles. And now it's looking like the first round, I'm thinking we're going to attack defensive tackle now in the second round or later. With it being a position with so much depth, it makes sense. They can wait. A couple of big names will drop. I'm sure of it. We're going to talk about one as a second round potential. And when that happens, then you slide right in and you go ahead and you bring in one of those guys. Now, Stephon Charles, under the radar, a lot of love from his former GM there with the Bills, saying that, he's a guy that he give you 30, 40 snaps. He's has so much potential and upside. Just simply put, they say, hey, you only pay so many guys. And so it sounds like it's someone that they weren't happy to get rid of, but they didn't have a choice. And so they made the move as a business decision. One person's lack of money, in the case of the Bills, could be a treat for us. And so, you look at that rotation, and is Gabe Wright the odd man out? I would say so. If you're looking at Reed, you're looking at Ngata, you're looking at Walker, I think Charles is ahead. Gabe Wright, who we no longer have a third-round pick for, could be the odd man out. Very disappointing if that's the case. Something has to give, though. Is it Karan Reed? You would assume that Ngata and Walker are safe. You just signed them. It's not guaranteed, though. It's going to be a big battle. I don't think Gabe Wright's going to sit there lying down. I don't think Stephon Charles is going to, kiss the ring of Haloti Ngata. These guys are going to be battling, and it's a good thing because due to injury, ineffectiveness, Teron Walker was hurt early. Haloti Ngata was hurt, but he played, but he was ineffective because of the injury. The defensive end, or rather tackle position, was lackluster, and we knew it would be a dip. You lose Ndamukong Suh, you lose Nick Fairley, even C.J. Weed-Mosley, Mr. Tok, you knew it was going to be a downgrade. And so it was definitely a downgrade, but it was much worse than I think any of us expected because the guys we brought in did not quite pan out due to injury. You're hoping for more health, and they do have a little bit more depth behind them. I think another year for Reed helps, another year for Wright, Stephon Charles, and then you look at Walker and Ngata and hope that they stay healthy, and still a draft pick will probably come in. I don't think it's the first round anymore, but, it's possible. I definitely think after the first round, it is an option of consideration, second, third, and beyond. So remember those lackluster names I was just saying? Because we didn't get any tackles. Donald Penn signed elsewhere. Mitchell Schwartz. Russell Okung was a guy a lot of us liked. Kelvin Beachum was a guy a lot of us liked. They're all gone. Defensive end, we've got Ziggy, we've got Devin Taylor, and we've got nobody, okay? We need some depth. It's going to come in the draft, but you have to count free agency and trades as well. So the names I've given you for guys that are available, I'm not doing the trades except one exception. You probably know who I'm going to mention there. Because other than this one guy, we're just throwing names out there. We don't know 100% who's on the trade block, who's due to get cut. You have to keep in mind June 1st cuts as well. And so I'm just giving you the options in terms of these guys can be on your team tomorrow because they don't have a current job. And like I said, the list is not pretty. Starting with offensive tackle, you've got Will Beatty. Now, he played with New York, and that's about all I can give you. Nondescript. He's had some solid years. He's a little up there in age. Again, you bring him in, he's probably just competing with Michael Ola as a starter. Not a guy you're penciling in as a fixture, not a guy you're counting on, not a guy you think will be that much of an impact. But you do need bodies, okay? And he is, I guess, a body. Same with Khalif Barnes. And then Jake Long. These guys are old, man. If this was Back to the Future and Jerry Mallory was giving you a podcast from 2012, it'd be like, man, Will Beatty, okay, Khalif Barnes, Jake Long especially, but I'm not doing the podcast from 2012. I'm not 27 years old. You're not 4 years younger. The Lions aren't, just drafting Nick Fairley. It's 2016, and 4 years makes a world of difference. These guys are unsigned right now for a reason, but, I still say it's going to have to be a draft pick and a signee, potentially. Well, I'll say a draft pick and a veteran. And so that's when a guy like Ryan Clady comes to the foray. Ryan Clady now is out of a job. Your left tackle in Denver is Russell Okung. Ryan Clady coming off the ACL injury, all-pro left tackle, one of the best in the league, but he's been injured quite a bit. The knee's bothersome, and he's due to make $12 million. Those are the downsides. The upside is it's a one-year deal. And so, you trade for him. Hopefully you don't have to give up much. I'm thinking like a fifth rounder potentially. Maybe, I hate to say a fourth and a fifth. It sounds like Haloti Ngata all over again. But that might be kind of where you're at with it. Don't have to give up a ton. If he stays healthy, you're getting one of the best tackles in the league. We saw last year, the Adrian Waddle, he looked good. He tore the ACL. He came back. He was horrible. I'm not comparing Waddle to Clady. Clady definitely has a much better pedigree. But the fact remains the ACL injury is worrisome. Now, there's a chance he might be cut. I think they're trying to make him take a pay cut. They're trying to get something for him. If teams just kind of sit there and don't take the bait, then I think Ryan Clady gets cut. Then you could bring him in for whatever. 2 years, $6 million deal, whatever the market kind of bears itself out with. Keep in mind, the guys that wanted left tackles, most of them have left tackles now. They've addressed it. Oakland was a team looking in that area. Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. These teams needed tackles. They went ahead and they brought them in. And so if Ryan Clady hits the open market, you're not competing with as many teams as before. You may be competing with Seattle, seeing what they want to do to replace Okung and shift things around. But there isn't a huge market now for the tackles because just about everybody that really wanted one got one except Detroit. And so defensive end is just as depressing. Now, Jason Jones, Darryl Tapp, they're out there. I won't call them outright depressing, but it's not an upgrade. These guys are coming in another year. We see what they can do. We know their limitations and their strengths. Both of them, they're on that downside of the trajectory. You're ascending as a rookie. Once you hit that very prime, you're at your peak. With every peak, there is a descent. They're on the downside of the roller coaster. So another year for Jason Jones, I don't think all of a sudden he's going to be better. Certainly for Darryl Tapp, who is a little bit older than that. But you need depth. They know the system. There's the connection there. And so those are two names. And then there's Jason Babin. He looks good in spots. He's from the Michigan area. Like I said, guys, the list is sparse. Trades, June 1st cuts, free agency, the draft, there's plenty of options, but just in terms of guys that you can legitimately sign, you could bring in and sign them right now, it's a little bit thin. Now, Mike Neal got brought in for a visit. He's played linebacker, but in a 3-4 for the Green Bay Packers. I like Mike Neal. He kind of reminds me of Darryl Tapp in terms of that size. He's about 6'3", 250-ish. Normally linebacker, but in our scheme could line up as a 4-3 defensive end. I would like that. To me, when I watched Mike Neal, and obviously, being a Lions fan, you see Mike Neal at least twice a year, but you're always watching the Packers, NFC foe. And so I probably see Mike Neal play a good 4 times, maybe even 5 times a year. To me, he's always making big plays. To me, he's always getting a big tackle, and it's a guy that we brought in. I would love if we got him in on a cheap deal, someone that you can then realistically transfer and say, we're going to do you like Darryl Tapp. You've played some linebacker in the 3-4. We're going to move you to 4-3. He's got the size. He's definitely got the strength to do it. And so that's just another guy that I'm throwing out there. Now, it's time to talk about some guys that's going to get paid big bucks. I gave you your lower end guys, your Jason Babbins and your Jason Joneses and your Khalif Barnes. There's a reason why Russell Okung probably is not here. There's a reason why Eric Weddle probably not here. We had interest in guys like this. It's simple. Like I said on Twitter, I'm at Jerry Mallory NFL. Although we have a lot of money, even more with Calvin, going ahead and hanging them up, we have a lot of guys in-house, young, about to hit their prime, used to the scheme. They're about to get paid. Now, the biggest two are obviously Ziggy Ansah and Darius Slay, but they aren't the only ones. Next year, unrestricted free agents, you've got Larry Warford, Theo Reddick, Sam Martin, and even Devin Taylor. And so there's some guys you got to sign, and they're already getting the wheels moving. If you hear reports, Bob Quinn sitting down with Drew Rosenhaus to discuss Darius Slay and Stephen Tulloch. Stephen Tulloch, is this guy still Stephen Tulloch is still on our team. We thought all this time that after the ACL and the reports that we were confident that Stephen Tulloch was getting that, but he's still on the team. So I don't know what they're discussing. Is it some type of negotiation? I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But yes, Stephen Tulloch is still on the team. But let's talk about these two big money guys. Now, Ansah, you don't have to sign him this offseason because you can pick up the 5th-year option on him because he is a first-round pick, but he's going to get some big money. Now, Slay, if you don't sign him this year, you have the option of franchising him or, well, then you have to pay him in that offseason, but you'll be competing with other people. Now, if you sign Slay this year, it kind of gives you that wiggle room to work with Ziggy. I think Slay's deal gets done in this offseason. This is the reason why the Lions have been cautious. They're not spending wildly for any and every player. They've got some young guys that they drafted about to hit their prime that's going to get some good money. And oftentimes, it's best just to pay. If you got good players on your team, pay them. You bring a new guy in, new scheme, new whatever. It doesn't always seem to work out. But re-signing your own guys who already have proven that they're valuable means a lot. Like I think the world of Slay. I think the size-speed combo is there. Had a rough few games, especially early on. He was looking like Darius Dre. He was looking like Dre Bly a little bit. Darius Bly, however you want to word it. Dre Slay, maybe some people want to say that. But he really showed how valuable he was to his team down the stretch. So what type of money is he going to get? Now, he just brought in Drew Rosenhaus. You don't bring in the mega agent. You don't bring in Drew Rosenhaus to be the 3rd highest paid cornerback in the league. Newsflash. You don't bring in Drew Rosenhaus when you're under 25 and you can run a 4.3 and you're 6 feet and, Pro Football Focus and the film says you're one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Not just the best young cornerback, you're one of the best cornerbacks in the league. You don't bring in Drew Rosenhaus and have that pedigree and have that talent to be the 2nd highest paid cornerback in the league. Guys, and I want to hear from you all on Twitter. You can email me. Darius Slay wants to be the highest paid cornerback, number 1 in the league. Does he deserve it? The cap fluctuates. Money keeps getting higher and higher. Year after this, someone else is going to get the top spot. It happens. Olivier Vernon, who we're going to be talking about in a second. And so him getting the highest paid does not mean he is the best, but he's young enough and he's like in that top 5 range-ish. Look out, I think it's going to happen. Now, for reference, Darrelle Revis, he makes $5 million, or rather 5 years, $5 million, yeah, right. 5 years and $71 million. That's where he's at. Or 70, I'm sorry, 5 years, 70. I think Slay is going to get 5 years, 71, putting him at $14.2 million annually per year. Is he worth it? That's the question I want to pose to you guys. I go back and forth on it. Ultimately, I say, yeah, the cap keeps increasing. You got to keep these talented guys around. He's young. He's still hungry. He's getting better each year. And, you don't draft a guy early just to lose him. Sometimes you got to buck up. You got to pay that money. I'd rather give him 14.2 than, you try to sign the Maxwell kid that didn't pan out, or you try to sign Aqib Talib and he goes crazy. I'd rather spend money in-house on guys I've drafted that's a little bit younger than these other free agents who are more in their mid to late 20s as opposed to your early to mid 20s, which Slay is, and it just doesn't seem to work. So keeping the guy in-house, 14.2 annually, I think is what he's going to get. I think the Lions should do it, and I think he deserves it when you factor in inflation and market value and, of course, his play on the field. And so then there's Ziggy. Ziggy's about to get paid. Olivier Vernon, Mr. 7 sacks, Mr. Pretty good, but this dude got 5 years, $85 million. That's $17 million annually. I know Ziggy had to see that and say, it's time to get paid. Ziggy is about to get paid. Listen, I'm not going to just keep running in circles. It's going to be 5 years, $90 million. He's going to be the top paid defensive lineman, the top paid defender in the league. That's a lot of money for 2 guys. 5 years, $90 million, annual of $18 million per year. But guess what? Just like Slay, Ziggy's young. He's in his mid-20s. He's getting better and better. This guy's still learning football. One of the best in the league, Pro Bowler, up there with sacks. Him and Khalil Mack, the those are the two young studs in terms of getting after the quarterback. Obviously, J.J. Watt's still in that mix. He's a little bit older. It is what it is, man. It's the market. The cap keeps increasing. You got to be smart about it. You sign these guys, and you have to keep being smart. And I think that's what Bob Quinn's doing. He's looking at some players that he wants to keep around on this team, but he realizes he can't just get free agents and then keep these guys. He rather keeps the younger guys. Okun's got his baggage. Beecham has his baggage. Vernon hasn't showed enough. You keep your guys in-house, and you keep it moving. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's time, draft time. We got to talk about the mixed bag. Like I said, I got 2 names each round and a surprise in the second round, so stay right here. Jerry Mallory here for the Hindsight 20 podcast. If you want your ad to be placed right here on one of the premier up-and-coming podcasts, on a premier up-and-coming already there network, it's simple. Send us an email, hindsight20podcast, podcast, at gmail.com. All right, we're back on the Hindsight 20. It's draft time. Are you a degenerate? Are you a draft junkie like me? Well, if you are, it's pretty cool because it's time to talk. Now, before we get into the names, like I said, I've got 2 names each round for the Lions, and I'm willing to put some money that if the draft started tomorrow night, that I would nail. I got 6 names here, 3 possible rounds. I guarantee you I would get 2 of these. All right, I'm putting myself on the line out here because I feel confident that way. Now, things can change. It is March 21st, the draft. So in a month from now, I'll be changing up probably these names. But I'm talking about if the draft started tomorrow. I got 2 names each round. I'm telling you, 2 of these names is going to hit. And you got to like your odds there. Before we get into it, though, it's, of course, story time. Just a brief story. Funny that the draft is coming in Chicago now. I want to try to make it to Chicago, try to cover it if possible. Got some things to talk about and work around. I had the privilege of going to New York for 3 years, 2012, 13, and 14 via SB Nation in their studio. Fun time, and covering the draft there was great. Some of the funny moments, though, were on the airplane. For instance, I show up, and, I'm a bigger guy. I guess I look decently young, a young black guy. I'm not in horrible shape, even though I'm nowhere near football shape. It's just very funny. I'm heading there to New York, and I'm in line getting checked out and whatever. And the guy, just chatting with another guy. He's like, "Where are you headed?" And I tell him I'm, going to New York. And he said, "Oh, cool. What for?" I said, "Oh, for the NFL draft." And he looks, and he's, "Oh, man. Congratulations, man. Oh, wow. What team do you think is going to pick you?" I had to explain to him that no, it would be great if I was going to be drafted. I'm going to cover the draft. Button-up shirts can hide a lot of imperfections, because I'm sure if he saw me with just, an undershirt on, he would be knowing that I'm going to the draft as a fan or to cover it, certainly not to be being picked up by any team. Now, speaking of looking at someone and saying, "Oh, this guy might be a football player," on my way to New York, I want to say, I guess the last year, 2014. So I'm sitting there and on the way there, and I'm looking at this guy, and he looks familiar. I couldn't figure out who it was. I'm like, this guy's a football player. He's like 6'1", like a 32-inch waist, incredible shape. I couldn't picture and figure out who it was for a second. I'm like, is it Joyke Bell? Lo and behold, I'm sitting next to the guy. It was James Ahedebo. This is right after he signed with the Lions. It was pretty cool. I actually sat next to James Ahedebo for the ride. Hey, if I was doing the podcast at the time, I could have slipped him a card, told him to check us out. But he was a pretty good guy. I didn't talk too much, to him. Let him get his rest or whatever. He was just saying of the impact he planned on making with the team, et cetera, et cetera. And it worked out. He had a pretty good year that year. Maybe if, we were on a plane together the following year, 2015, he would have had another successful year. But in all seriousness, kind of cool. Also signed Terry Poe down there during the draft. It's a fun time. So I'm hoping to see if some type of way I can make my way to Chicago and do some more coverage. Let's get into it. I got the names each round. We're going to start from 3 and work our way up to 1 because I like the suspense. So in the third round, as you know, we have compensatory pick. Is it what, 95? I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me, but I do believe it's pick number 95 at the end of the third round, the first of the compensatory third round picks. Two names for you to consider for the Detroit Lions. First off is Sterling Shepard. Now, we've addressed the issue of receiver. You bring in Marvin Jones, you bring in Curley, you still got TJ Jones, but Sterling Shepard is a guy from Oklahoma, receiver that is under the radar. He's smaller, but he's shifty. He works in that slot. He operates. And so this is a guy that I think the Lions may consider. You look at kind of the type of player we're going for, the mode. I think he would complement some of the things. We still do need some of those faster guys, some of those shifty guys to go along with, like a Golden Tate type of person. Again, it's all about depth. And so it'd be great to have two guys that can operate in the slot. Curley can also operate in the slot. But what if Golden Tate goes down? A guy like Sterling Shepard, they're not clones. They're not mirror, image in terms of players, but they do have some similarities. My second guy, if he falls, again, like I said, defensive tackles may be falling. It's Austin Johnson, defensive tackle from Penn State. I've mentioned this guy on several occasions because his stock has been falling. I've seen late first and then, second. Now I'm looking and I'm seeing some guys talking about he may go to the third. If you're sitting there at 95 and he's still there, I think Austin Johnson, defensive tackle, Penn State, would be a really good look. Now, the second round gets interesting because, like I said, I got a trade that we're going to talk about as well. First off, two guys. I think one has a good chance of dropping. The other, at one point, I thought he'd be there in the second round. Maybe he will. We have to wait and see. It's Sua Cravens. Now, he feels the need of safety. We brought in Raphael Bush. We got, I can't even think of the name, Tavon Johnson from New England. But let's face it, we could still use some help at the safety position. Sua Cravens from USC is multifaceted. He can play safety or he can play linebacker. And so you got Tahir Whitehead, man in the middle. Sua Cravens can play as that third linebacker in certain situations. He can drop back and be your starting strong safety. I love the flexibility. He's a good tackler, decent speed, range. He brings all those things to the table. And so, again, Sua Cravens, I don't know if he'll fall now. I've even seen some mocks where he's going to the Lions in the first round. You read the tea leaves or whatever you want to call it. It seems as though the Lions may be interested in this guy. And so if he's there in the second round, I think the Lions will pounce. Get it? Lions, big cat, pounce. All right. The second guy is Jerron Reed. Now, they were giving Jerron Reed, defensive tackle from Alabama, a very long and extended look. I want to say our defensive line coach was even instrumental in the training of Jerron Reed this past week in the camps, the scouting camps. I can't think of any names right now. Jerry Mallory probably needs some water. Their pro day, that's what I was trying to say. And so they're getting information on him. They're getting a look at him. I think it's if he falls to the second round. Now, he may go in the first round. I would not be crazy if that was a Lions pick at 16. But in the second round, again, the depth at that position, guys are going to drop. Sheldon Rankins will be picked. Ashawn Robinson will be picked. DeForest Buckner, kind of a tweener. But a lot of defensive tackles are there. So Billings and Jerron Reed, everyone's not going to go in the first round. Someone's going to fall. I think Jerron Reed might be one of those guys. Now, speaking of someone falling, my new prediction is Reggie Ragland falls out of the first round. Now, he won't make it, I don't think, to the Lions pick in the second round. However, you know how that goes in day two. You saw it with Janoris Jenkins. You saw it with Geno Smith. Big name falls, and whoever has that first pick in the second round, because you got that day, so people are now willing and dealing, considering what to do, who to sign, etc., etc. I think Reggie Ragland is one of the first picks in the second round. The Lions have some ammo. They've got several picks. They've got 10 picks this year. Move up, move down, move around, do some maneuvering, and Reggie Ragland could be a guy that they target in the second round. Be that as it may, whether he's the guy or not for the Lions, I do think he falls out of the first round. He's looked a little bit slow, a little sluggish. In today's modern NFL, it's not the best fit. So I think he falls out of the first round, and teams will be lining up to get him with one of the first few picks in the second round. Let's go to the first round pick for the Lions. I've got two names. They're both needs. Now, I'm cheating. When I say two names for this one position, I got two names for one spot, okay? It's offensive tackle, Conklin and Taylor Decker. I think Conklin doesn't make it to 16. I think someone scoops him up, but if he's there, they consider it. Taylor Decker, though, is the next guy. He's got good size and strength. He kind of reminds me of Nate Solder, a guy that Bob Quinn knows a lot about. Left tackle for a lot of years, playing on that offense line. He's played some right and left tackle for the New England Patriots. They're both really tall guys, but they can move decently, and they definitely have a mean streak. I think Taylor Decker is getting overlooked. I like him more than most, and I think that if the need of offensive tackle is so bad and he's there, he's quality. You're not settling and saying, oh, we have to draft a tackle, so let's bring him in. No, he's a quality player, and I think he's going to have a very fine NFL career. Whether it's the right or the left, we need a tackle very badly, and I think he fills in and does a fine job. Now, the next guy, he did play at Ohio State, didn't finish there. It's Noah Spence. He isn't your typical Lions, pick. He's had the issues, but this guy out of Eastern Kentucky is a beast. I think if he played at Ohio State, he'd been a top 10 pick. No doubt about it. 6'3", 260, all the physical tools. I'm glad him and Bosa weren't lined up this year because they would have wreaked havoc all over not just the Big Ten, but all the NCAA. It's a risk, but it's a risk that's worth taking. Such a needed defensive end. He has the potential, in my opinion, to be the best edge rusher in this draft. And so when you look at Devin Taylor, good on the rotation, Noah Spence, Ziggy Ansah, that's a great young core. And so bringing back a Jason Jones or a Darryl Tapp doesn't feel that bad. Talent overrides many things. I think he's over the issues. I think he's learned from them. I think the Lions will give him a good look, and I think that he is another target. So you've got Noah Spence. I cheated. Taylor Decker / Jack Conklin, both offensive tackles. Sua Cravens, Jerron Reed. Reed is a defensive tackle. Cravens, he's a linebacker / safety. Sterling Shepard, receiver from Oklahoma, and Austin Johnson, defensive tackle from Penn State. And the prediction, Reggie Ragland falls out of the first round. Guys, this has been fun. Most of the free agents have been signed. There isn't a Russell Okung watch anymore, but there's still plenty of Lions talk. Keep tuning in at Jerry Mallory NFL is where I can be found on Twitter. And as always, I'm right here every Monday, Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I want to thank you for listening. We'll be back next Monday. And until then, this has been Jerry Mallory for Hindsight 20.